in a knight versus bishop endgame that the computer is saying, oh, there's no chance, it's equal for, the last 50 moves. And he just keeps on putting pressure, knowing that at some point, even someone like Arjun can make that one mistake. That's all you need, maybe due to time pressure. And that's absolutely been his strategy, not taking too much risk, but being there to pounce on that one blunder.
It's incredible. And let's point out that this rivalry goes quite a way back. In 22, they played their Junior Speed Chess Championship match, which was also a very thrilling battle. And it was Denis Lazavik who took the lead in that 5+1. And this time, we've got, for the first time in the match, a Sicilian.
Yeah, this should be exciting to take a look at. You always see the players' repertoires kind of evolve over a match, Tanya, because you never want to be too predictable. One thing that we saw was, that opening that Arjun kept going into, and it was probably starting to add up. I think Denis did not like that opposite bishop push from the last time they played.
And that's a great point, because this entire format, it demands adaptability by the players. We saw Denis employ the Berlin, and then it felt like Arjun had the advantage the first time around, converted it the second time around, and then Denis wanted none of that. We saw Alireza do the same against Mian Le, where he shifted from the Spanish to the Italian to avoid the Schliemann. So Denis sort of going on the same path, and a big skill set to have in this format to switch it up.
Yeah, agree. I actually think that is probably one of the top skill sets, apart from being just incredibly skilled. Every player is in this event, being able to adapt. And we're seeing that here. H4, one thing that's not changing, talk about adaptability, one thing that's never going away are these H pawn pushes up the board. Tanya, H4 here. I mean, how do we begin to explain these H pawn pushes that are just so common?
So common, so consistent. It's amazing because especially there is no rook on h1 right now. Despite not having that rook, here we've got the h-pawn sort of preempting the idea that you want to advance it further. But I also wonder if by Arjun, it's also got this positional aspect of controlling the g5 square and threatening that knight once it does land to g6. The only way to develop that bishop on f8 with the move h5. Stopped now by Denis.
Yeah, and we see h5, it's almost like these two know something that the rest of us don't know, because h4 looked peculiar, and then h5, he says, I don't know what you're up to, but I don't want to see any part of it. He does want to maybe secure that g6 square for the knight, but now the g5 square is looking a little more in white's control. So I wonder if black is going to just play maybe like f6 and situate those pawns a little bit more on dark squares, while the light squared bishop appears to be getting stronger with every pawn push.
It's very interesting here. He does play g3 quickly, defending that h4 pawn, not caring about those light square weaknesses. And that's a big committal choice to make, especially when you don't have that bishop on your own. And of course, Denis places his bishop on g4. It's time for Arjun to go on the other flank.
Yeah, exactly. Rook a5 makes complete sense. You often want to even shift all the firepower over. Queen to a1. Queen a2, and then rook a1, suddenly that a-pawn is, it just cannot be defended. So I think we know that there's going to be a counterattacking move coming from Denis, whether it's an f5 idea, maybe after castling, whether it's a c5 idea, because look, we're seeing the moves on the board, Tanya. Something's got to give, because that a-pawn can't be defended.
He's setting it up. He's about to sacrifice that pawn for the initiative. Denis Lazavik is. He goes with another central strike. d5, it might look like it's a pawn sacrifice, but that would open up the queen on c7, attacking the c2 pawn if Arjun was to capture on the center of the board. And also nicely pointed out there, bishop takes pawn, a big threat. Stopped.
Yeah, bishop c5 has been played. Makes a lot of sense to trade these bishops. It's just one of those recurring themes when you're playing against the bishop pair. You have a bishop knight. Trading the same color bishops that remain on the board, just almost always a really good thing to do. And even though the a-pawn is not being captured yet, Tanya, we know that it's a sitting duck in the future once white gets the queen up and the rook over to a1.
Well, for now, he does deflect one of the rooks. I wonder if white also wants to get the queen to a6, attacking that c6 pawn, and then your idea of bringing the other rook into the game. But there's so much to look out for once black gets f5. The black rook beautifully placed on f8. This is going to be about timing. f5, rook takes c6. Queen takes pawn, the g6 knight is hanging, fire on the board.
Yeah, I think you said it best. It's all about timing. So black is probably interested in something like, rook c8, like go ahead and take my a pawn. That's the one I don't care about. F5 is the source of counterplay. It's just about whether you can time it correctly, because F5, if you take on E4 or if you play F4, Tanya, it actually looks incredibly scary and maybe tough to deal with.
It does, and the other threat that's tough to deal with is that with queen a6, pawn takes pawn is also set up. Let's find out that c6 pawn is in fact pinned right now with the queen on d6. So queen a6 is quite the nasty move by Arjun.
Yeah, really like
rook takes
that.
pawn as well.
Pointing out not just pawn takes, but you made me realize rook takes is even in the air, which I hadn't even considered. So that's probably why we see this 1 minute advantage opening up as Denis is processing all of these threats arriving at once.
Because you have to defend the c6 pawn, you have to defend your queen on d6. And the bar doesn't give a massive advantage to white, which makes me feel like there is a good response that black has. But man, it's not easy to figure it out. What is the move here? Help us out.
I mean, in order to guard everything, I'm starting to think of knight e7 because it does watch over the two important squares, and maybe the knight on g6 is not doing that much. But otherwise, it's trouble. The d pawn, I don't see any way to guard that while guarding the c pawn at the same time. So I gravitate to knight e7.
Well, whatever he does, he needs to do it fast. Knight e7 is a move that you really hesitate to make simply because it's a retreating defensive move. You're eyeing that knight as an attacking piece once you get f5, but perhaps it was the way to go. We see a question mark on that capture. Knight takes pawn comes in with a threat on the queen.
Yeah, this is a move much like knight e7 that you also really don't want to play. So I think we can say that Denis is not happy with his position no matter what. The time really tells the tale there. You can throw in rook takes c6 if you want. Knight takes e4. Although it gains time on the queen, you will have to answer with this knight on f3 after because it would be hanging.
It's a great point. And you need to know what you're doing next. He does go for the attack on the queen, also the c6 pawn hanging. First question to Denis, where do you place your queen? It's not an easy one to answer because the f6 square is under control. He goes back, eyeing that b4 pawn as well. It's attack, counter-attack, every move.
And keeping e5 defended, right? The e-pawn could not be taken, which white would have loved to do. Instead, we see knight g5, and I think there's going to be a few tactical shots here because the move f6, it appears as though it traps the knight, but there are so many reasons why that is not necessarily the reality. White has the c6 pawn that can be captured with an x-ray on the knight, and of course, queen c4. So things are heating up here, Tanya.
Really quickly, really fast right now. Rook takes pawn on the board. The queen captures the pawn. And there we see Denis. He's trying to dislodge one of the knights. And though it says that white has a big advantage, I still think it's anyone's game this is. With the a-pawn moving forward, if white's queen was to ever go away, then we suddenly have a big passer in the endgame if you're Denis.
Agreed. The knights are jumping everywhere. I feel like this has been the theme of a few games now. Knights are so difficult to deal with. Even grabbing the f7 pawn can lead to a lot of tactics for white here. The queen on b4 at some point could slide over to the king side, but it seems like it's white who's on the attack.
And that's a big threat. It's not just the bishop, but knight takes pawn gets rid of that defender on f7. g6 knight being tender as well. And I don't even know if Denis has the time. He does retreat with the bishop. You can smell the tactics here.
Oh, yeah, I did not like the look of that move. Denis even shook his head after he moved. I mean, the obvious is just knight takes bishop because you play that, maybe bring the knight back to e4. That is just a really bad position.
Just positionally super ugly, right? You've got these two pawns. White's threatening to go rook c7. White's threatening to attack that e6 pawn. He goes for it. The knight heading to g5. And suddenly, all of Denis's majors are disconnected. The queen not attacking with the black rook. The knight on g6 completely misplaced with no future. Wins a pawn.
Yep. Oh, this is a really, really nice move. Queen a2. Love the geometry there, Tanya. Queen a2 allowing the queens to remain on the board. Knight g5 is coming in. How do you defend? Knight h4. What a shot using the queen.
That is desperation, but desperation is the need of the second here for Denis Lazavik. He needs to do everything he can. It's the panic button that's being hit right now. White needs to find the rook trade. Rook takes b6. I think that will be played. Pawn takes knight, queen takes pawn, and then suddenly ideas of the g5 knight falling with the check are pretty terrifying to deal with.
Yeah, it's not just queen takes h4, but queen g4 stopping on the way. Rook takes b6, even just to clear the way for the queen to join the action on e6, and he finds it.
And that's why those extra seconds are so incredibly important. Denis playing with 6 seconds, Arjun over a minute. He's going to pick up the h5 pawn with a check. He's picking up the whole house.
Yeah, everything just fell there. If the queens disappear from the board, this should be a win. He's trying to get the king to go to h7 so he can trade queens with queen e4, but not allowing it is Denis.
He doesn't allow it, but there is only so much you can do with your rook pinned. White wants to activate the rook from f1 to an open line, thinking if he can do it instantly. Instead, a more cautious approach, queen trade has to be denied if you're black here.
Yeah, the queen centralizes really nicely on e4, maybe with the idea of rook a8, although if I'm being honest, I'd rather trade the queens than the rooks.
And Denis is trying to create his threats with the queen and the rook combo. The f2 pawn attacked right now. Rook b2, don't make that blunder. Queen takes rook would be quite the ice shocker there. Instead, Arjun just pushes the pawn, and now the white rook comes into the attack. Rook e6 to follow up. The king will be absolutely safe on the third rank. And this looks like a power play by the white majors in the center of the board.
Yeah, there's no immediate win. So black, I think, is going to benefit from a few checks here. Maybe white's going to go back with the queen. Yep, just to stop the checks. Interesting. Still a big fight here from Denis, despite how lost the position is. Oh,
and
blunder.
queen h1 was the sneaky idea, but blunders do not come